Denis Villeneuve's Dune Messiah is a film that has a lot of challenges to overcome when adapting the source material by Frank Herbert. There's the slower, character-driven approach with less action or scale in the literal sense, there's way less locations and narrative events in comparison to the previous book, and characters are taken in directions that some were stunned by back in the day. But Denis did the right thing in his adaptation of the first two films because he did change things, but only did so in conjunction with Herbert's vision for the Messiah storyline. He knew what the author's intentions were when it came to the way the audience would react to Paul Atreides, and he knew that to fit in line with that, he had to make adjustments. There's a lot that can go wrong with adapting this story, but I think it also presents a great opportunity to make something unique and end the new film trilogy in a way no other trilogy has. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing why I personally believe that Dune Messiah can be the best Denis Villeneuve Dune film. This video will contain brief spoilers from the Messiah book, so if you don't want anything spoiled going into the film, then I would recommend watching this video at a later time. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Dune Messiah and beyond, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating and subscribing to the channel. But without further ado, let's dive into the reasons why Dune Messiah can be the best of the current trilogy. So if you've seen my other videos on Dune Messiah, you'll know that I think the book by Frank Herbert is incredibly underrated and ahead of its time. Narratively and thematically, I think it's a story that is right for these times, especially with all the political conflictions people have today surrounding leaders and how there's a divide in the support for them. Paul Atreides in Dune Messiah is very much the conflicted figure, and politically he goes on quite the roller coaster. Adapting that and making a movie that has the potential to be more of a political drama is something that I think many audiences who haven't read the book won't expect. In my opinion, Dune Messiah explores the perils of unquestioning faith, the corruptive influence of power, and the weight of leadership, providing a more intricate and thought-provoking examination of these themes compared to the original book. And sure, you need the amazing work done in that original novel to lead us into Messiah's dramatic conclusions. But with the risks Messiah took as a story, I think it has the potential to translate in quite a unique way to the big screen if it is delivered on. Saying this, some readers may find it to be an engaging and intellectually stimulating experience, whereas others might lean towards the original Dune's classic sci-fi adventure. The original Dune certainly serves as a captivating entry point into the universe, its characters, and the overarching themes of the series, offering a more fulfilling first reading experience. However, for me, while Dune laid the groundwork and familiarised the audience with the themes Herbert aims to explore, Dune Messiah represents his core argument regarding leadership and power dynamics. Dune Messiah prompts the reader to reflect on themselves by reassessing Paul, and for that very reason, I haven't stopped thinking about it. In particular, as I hinted at before, I think we're going to see a heavy character-driven film that focuses more on the dialogue and performances between characters than it does the sci-fi elements we've seen in the previous two. Now, that's not to say that Dune Messiah is not going to have show-stopping visuals and moments of action, because I think Denis has already stated that the film will be heightened in that sense too, and he will add moments to make it feel larger. But that also doesn't mean that Denis is going to remove the identity of Messiah as a book, because like I've talked about, it has a very unique sensibility. For me, it's going to be more a drama and tragedy than the first two were, and when it comes to the award season and honouring the craft and storytelling behind Dune, I think Messiah will benefit from that massively. What made the first Dune film so interesting was Denis' focus on the detail behind all of the flashier elements. The story of Messiah takes that to another level, and you find that moments with characters, the themes, and even singular locations used are explored in a lot more depth. And that's because Messiah focuses on going deeper into less, and like I said before, it's more a character study than we've seen previously. Messiah spends a lot of time in the city of Arrakis in single locations with Paul as he grapples with his own legacy and the future based on the decisions that have been made. It's very introspective, and it sets up a film that can be very deep and very intriguing as a trilogy closer. Essentially, a more character-focused film that feels a bit like what we got in part 1, but more conclusive and dramatic in the scenes we do get. The narrative investigates the repercussions of Paul Atreides' decisions and the unforeseen outcomes that follow, presenting a cautionary narrative about the weight of prophecy and the possibility that even the most well-meaning leaders may inadvertently generate more issues than they resolve. It challenges the concept of a saviour and highlights the perils of unquestioning faith in a charismatic leader. It illustrates how Paul's prophetic visions propel him into actions that culminate in a catastrophic galactic jihad. The narrative delves into the corrupting nature of power and the difficulties of balancing leadership with accountability. And despite his good intentions, Paul becomes overwhelmed by his position as emperor, resulting in significant suffering for many, including himself. To some of the Fremen, he's the long-awaited messiah who was destined to lead them, and to the rest of the Fremen and the envious houses and feudal factions, he is seen as an imposter. Influential figures in the known universe are plotting to overthrow him, and this is because, in order to protect his empire and maintain control over spice production, Paul's war has extended to the far reaches of space. Billions have died, and the fighting shows no signs of stopping. So while Dune depicted the rise of an empire, Messiah explores its downfall in very unexpected ways. It essentially examines the intricacies of human nature, shedding light on the imperfections and constraints that even remarkable individuals face. It addresses the weight of prophecy, illustrating how predetermined destinies can serve as both a beacon of hope and a potential snare. Now, to many, the narrative can be seen as a critique of social and political systems, tackling issues such as colonialism, power disparities, and the perils of unquestioning loyalty. It presents a rich array of characters, each wrestling with their own desires and convictions, especially in that of Paul, who endures significant psychological conflict as he confronts his fate and the repercussions of his own decisions. It serves as a warning about the perils of unquestioning belief and the intricacies of human behaviour, ensuring its relevance and impact on readers even in today's times. Messiah was written in reaction to the fact that people perceived Paul as a hero, which is not what author Frank Herbert wanted to do. Denis' adaptation is to get closer to that idea that it's actually a warning. Messiah was a very different kind of book that took everything that was presented before and critiqued it on a character level and even a storytelling and structural one. And I think what we've seen in Villeneuve's films so far has definitely kept that in mind with the changes he's made. When it comes to the filmmaking behind Messiah, the narrative setup of the story also makes that element a whole lot more interesting too. Now sure, Villeneuve is planning to include more action in the film and has stated that in multiple interviews. But with the added focus on the drama and politics behind the Messiah storyline, the production of the piece can be heightened in other areas. For instance, the towering structures within Arrakis City and around Paul's Golden Lion throne can be designed in a more extravagant way than we've seen with the sets in the Dune films thus far. Denis and his artists can really focus on elevating a few locations and showcasing the extreme details of these sets on the big screen. I remember rereading Messiah and being blown away by the descriptions of how big some of the locations were, like the doors that lead into Paul's Keep or the makeover that Arrakis City has had since the first Dune, described in contrast to the lives some of the Fremen are now living deep in the desert. That doesn't just work as good visual shots because it also links to the circumstances of the narrative and the way Paul's character is viewed by his own people now. So from an aesthetic point of view, Messiah already has some incredible detail there to be explored. And Denis can further take some risks with the way the camera is used in the many dialogue-driven scenes of Messiah's narrative. There's a lot more of these in the second book, and to communicate the sense of plotting amongst other characters like Helen Mohiam or Princess Irulan, he can use the camera as a tool to convey that sense of unease or tension. Denis built his career on scenes that had a lot more tension or drama within the narrative, like seen in Sicario or Prisoners, and less so with large-scale action. So I think he is primed to make this kind of approach work within the Dune saga and give us a different kind of film. While a lot of people are worrying about how Messiah will be adapted, I personally think that a story like this gives him the opportunity to make a film that isn't your traditional franchise or trilogy closer. You know, people expect Return of the King, Return of the Jedi, or The Dark Knight Rises level epic from this final Dune in his trilogy. But if you've read Messiah, you know it's not that, and in fact, it's kind of the reverse. So I do think that this is going to be a big hurdle to get over when adapting this book and giving the audience a satisfying ending to his Paul Atreides story. He's got to make it feel like the dramatic conclusion to his take on Dune, but then find a way to do so with a project that's less focused on the conventions of an epic saga. Will he end it exactly like it ends in the book, and will it lean into the future beyond Messiah 2? Or will he make changes to make it feel either more conclusive or suggestive about what might happen beyond it? There are big questions, but what I will say is that if anyone can pull it off, it's director Denis Villeneuve. It sounds like a silly comparison to make, but I think a good recent closer of a franchise that can be used as a comparison is something like Logan. Take that film, one that didn't have any gigantic set pieces, as a final Fox Wolverine installment, and it really just let the storytelling, themes, and dramatic consequences play out. Yes, there was plenty of action in there, but it was smaller scale and fully character driven, like when Wolverine had to fight a rageful version of himself, communicating the central thematic of the film in a very smart way. In Messiah's smaller moments of action, I think Denis can do something similar, whether it's in the Sightale killings, the Aaliyah gathering scene, the Stoneburner scene, or the confrontation with Sightale at the very end. He can communicate the challenges and dilemmas Paul and other characters have to face through the moments that take place on screen. Sometimes the simpler approach can be way more effective dramatically, and I think that might be what Denis leans into, alongside the added detail being put in aesthetically and from a filmmaking perspective. It will be interesting to see what he does, and as you can probably tell with my recent Messiah videos, I'm very intrigued about what direction he will go in, especially knowing what type of story Dune Messiah is. But that was my video discussing why Dune Messiah can become Denis Villeneuve's best Dune film. It is a big challenge to pull off, but I do think that Messiah can work as an unusual but also fitting ending to Villeneuve's Dune trilogy. The director and his team consistently aim to raise the bar in sci-fi filmmaking, and while the Messiah story calls for less of what we saw in the first two films, it's a story that can provide some unique foundations of its own. I'm going to be doing more topical videos on the film in the coming months, including a video talking about how Denis might tackle the ending and the character of Charlie in his new movie. So look out for those uploads and let me know down below in the comments section what other topics you would like to see covered surrounding the upcoming Dune Messiah. For much more videos and news on Denis Villeneuve's Dune universe, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.